Hello everyone, thank you for joining us today. My name is Alexander Martonik and I'm a lead on Esri's commercial business team here. I specialize in real estate banking and insurance, and I help our users close bigger deals faster by creating powerful narratives and custom applications that really bring sites to life. We're excited to be presenting to you today on the location strategy and how it can help you overcome your greatest business challenges. I'd like to introduce today's speaker, Robbie Deming from our marketing programs team. Robbie?
Thanks so much, Alex, and thanks for having me on this webinar today. So my name is Robbie Deming. I'm a marketing program manager at Esri, where I focus on location strategy for business. I've worked with Esri for almost 11 years, and for more than a decade, I've helped businesses, governments, and nonprofits understand how geospatial tools and information can help them drive smarter decisions and better outcomes for organizations and people around the world. So I want to get started by kind of discussing why we're even here and what we're doing with this webinar today. And essentially, we believe that the entire commercial industry and retail and real estate in particular are in the midst of massive, massive changes. And so we thought we could kind of set up the situation by exploring three basic questions. So the first question is, if someone had asked you about Uber 10 years ago, what would you have thought? And I can tell you what I would have thought. I would have thought it was a crazy idea simply because it was so out of left field, and there were all these interests that I thought were entrenched, and there was never any way this kind of radically different service like Uber would ever take off. And of course, what we've seen is not only has Uber taken off, but it's spawned a whole kind of sub-industry of ride-sharing. And we've seen this before in business. About a decade ago, maybe a little bit farther back, Netflix did the exact same thing to the video industry. And again, it not only displaced an established business model, but it actually spawned an entire new industry and sub-industry and kind of way of interacting with video content. So the upshot here is the world is changing faster than we could ever imagine. And disruption is going to happen. The question is, are you looking for it? Are you paying attention for it? In retail, we're seeing that there's a very sharp retraction coming in terms of brick and mortar due to the correction in terms of the per capita square footage we have of real retail space. You know, as a retailer, if you're a retailer or if you're in a commercial business, are you in a place to make the best decisions about how that's going to impact you? You need to make sure you're paying attention to these things, and if you're not already thinking about it, you may well be behind already. So the second question is really speaks to the consumerization of IT, and essentially that we as consumers and we as individuals now expect everything to be as simple and straightforward as our own personal tech experience. You know, if I go to a big box store, it shouldn't be easier for me to see if an item is in stock than it is for one of the employees. And the simple fact of the matter is that no matter what kind of business people interact with, they expect businesses to be tech savvy and to be able to leverage the latest tools and technology. As consumers, we expect to be able to do everything from our phones. But as businesses, we don't seem to demand the same sort of requirements out of our own tools and processes. And why is that? What is that doing for us? And really, is that the place where we should be living as things are increasingly digital? And finally, the last question has to do with how are you going to stay ahead of changes in the marketplace? And this simply has to do with timing and being ahead of the curve. You know, imagine if you had been, as a grocery store or as a retailer, out in front of the rise of the Greek yogurt craze, or in the real estate industry, if you'd been in places like Palo Alto and Brooklyn before the property markets exploded there. Early adopters often get the opportunity to shape markets and influence the demand for them. And the bottom line is the world will continue to change whether you're ready for it or not. So what it comes down to is you can't just keep doing business the way you used to. The world has changed and businesses need to adapt.
And with this, we want to go into, how are these trends coming about? How are companies like Uber able to come in and disrupt the market so quickly? And they have the data to support the decisions. Data-driven decision-making now is what's leading these tectonic shifts in the marketplace. And a lot of us, we try to overcome with the fact that we already have a lot of data. If I was to ask the majority of you, would you rather have more data or less data? You'd want less data. You'd want to be able to get the value out of what you currently have. And moving forward in the future, how are we going to create processes to sort through and understand all these factors? Because our stakeholders are going to have increasing demands. I mean, if I was to ask you, do you think there's going to be more need or less in the future? There's going to be more. And it's going to get even more hyper-local. So what types of data are you going to need going forward? We're seeing now the transition from just demographics and census data to now customer behavior and movement, bringing in now mobile data, financial transactions, overlaying all of these, and again, looking at very specific hyper-local cases. And this can become very daunting very quickly as you're consumed and overwhelmed with how do you even process all of these. And lastly, are you in a position to get the most value from this data? So I've seen two common problems with different clients that we've interacted with over the past couple of years. The first is that they have most of the data they need, but it's spread across multiple Excel spreadsheets. They have property listings, they have demographic reports, they have economic indicators, but all of these are in different Excel spreadsheets. So if they need one piece of information or insight, they go to one sheet. And then keeping all of this straight, being able to readily access that information for stakeholders, it becomes a very long manual process. On the other end, some of our more advanced users, they have very specific enterprise systems in place, but each one of those systems only provides one piece of insight. It only tells one story. So then there's even more of a manual process collecting all that information and again, telling that story. The way to overcome the data paralysis is to have a set strategy and one system to help you integrate all of these types of data and present it in a way that's easily digestible from your stakeholders.
Yeah, Alex is absolutely right. And if you think about the way you interact with businesses, this starts to become more apparent. In both retail and real estate, consumers now have so much more power than they ever did before. I mean, I'm a millennial. I'm 32 years old. I'm a big video game geek. And so it's really easy for me to do something like go and check and see which retailers have the latest Nintendo Switch. Alternatively, as consumers, we now know how easy it is to find a residential property that is in our ideal neighborhood and ticks all of the boxes, which of course includes things like proximity to schools, transportation corridors, parks, and entertainment. It's not hard as individuals for us to get information anymore, but a lot of businesses don't seem to have understood this reality yet. They still think they're the gatekeepers of knowledge and their relationships with their customers, and this just not the sense. It's just not how it is anymore. And we're seeing this across every industry. Even more traditional industries like banking have seen the new fintech companies come in and challenge some of these previously held ideas and assumptions that were considered sacred. For example, if you're a loan-centric business, how do you adapt to the fact that some millennials prefer access to something like a car rather than directly owning it? That has a huge ramification on your business. So what this means is that we have to move beyond intuition alone. Your gut can sometimes be wrong, but it can also be incredibly accurate at times. So what organizations need to start doing is to validate their instincts and their intuition with authoritative data and tools. And what this has ended up creating is sort of this huge flood and rush towards analytics right now. Every organization is looking to be better, faster, stronger. But there's a real danger there in that just going after analytics for the sake of analytics can lead you to insights that don't actually have any impact on your business or aren't actually achievable. So the danger here is that as people realize they need to get more digitally kind of competent and have a better understanding of what's going on in their businesses, that there's a real risk of just doing analysis for the sake of analysis. But you need to make sure that you're rooting your analytics and the things you're looking at and the things that actually impact your business. And at Esri, we feel that a location strategy is the best way to do that. When I talk to people about a location strategy, what we're essentially talking about is taking the same sort of capabilities and processes that you go through for a traditional workflow like site selection and amplifying those out and taking them out of a niche tool and applying them to your entire organization. So what we mean is, applying now GIS or a location strategy to a whole host of new workflows, things like marketing, targeting where you offer certain promotions and loyalty program management, store merchandising and assortment, portfolio optimization, risk analytics. It goes on and on. But the whole idea is to create a framework that makes location a strategic enterprise advantage for your business. It's not just using GIS as a niche tool to solve a very specific problem. It's making this kind of location analysis part of your organization's core DNA and one of your core enterprise competencies. And the way that a location strategy really can do all this is because everything in business happens somewhere. Now, I realize that seems like a ridiculously simplistic view of the world, but when you step back and you think about it, it's a really powerful idea. All of your employees all come from specific locations, they travel along specific paths, and they work in one of your facilities. The same is true of your customers. Your suppliers have locations, your competitors have locations. Stop and just think about, is there a data set you work with on a daily basis that doesn't have some kind of location component to it? There's probably not. And when you start to implement a location strategy and you start to really unlock the power of location across your enterprise, what you're able to do is deliver 3 different systems. So the first is a system of record. And so a location strategy built on ArcGIS lets you tie directly into your authoritative data stores and use location as that common integration point across all of your data. We've actually had some customers who've shifted to using ArcGIS as their own system of record, but it just depends on how you want to implement it. But regardless, it's that ability to get access to the authoritative information that is driving your business. But at the same time, it's not just about having access to the information, and that's where the system of engagement comes in. You want to make sure you're providing focused views into the data that matters with intuitive apps that can easily be configured and shared. We've seen this a lot, and especially with real estate consulting companies that have developed a suite of very specific tailored apps and workflows to deal with certain types of customers. And finally, with location strategy, you get a system of insights. And what we're essentially doing here is turbocharging your analytics by unlocking the dimensions of space and time. And every single component of ArcGIS includes this capability. So what I want to do now is start walking you through some of the main benefits of implementing a location strategy. And the first one is harnessing the potential of your data. As Alex mentioned, you probably all think you have too much data as it is. And my guess is there's a lot of things within your existing data that you're not even able to work with and tap into the way you would like to. With a location strategy, you're really able to make your data work for you and bring it to life. And this doesn't, the great thing about a location strategy is it doesn't matter what kind of data you're working with. As long as your data has some kind of location component, even if it's a custom type of geography like a sales territory or something, you can work with it. And when you start to think about all of the different data sets that a retailer or real estate organization might interact with on a daily basis, you can see where this starts to become powerful. Of course, you've got things like your point of sale data. Increasingly, we're seeing data come in from the IoT and devices. So in a retail setting, this has to do with things like indoor mapping and keeping track of where customers are lingering in a store and getting a sense of, where people, what are the paths they take through your stores. Social media is a huge data source that can be accessed and tapped through a location strategy. You've got supplier data, competitor data. There's just all these different data sets, and with a location strategy, you can really start to uncover these new connections and understand the relationships between some of your seemingly disparate data sets. Now, if I was to ask you, do you think something like weather impacts sales? You're probably going to say, yeah, of course. But without a location strategy, it's really difficult to understand that relationship between weather and sales. And that's really where the power of a location strategy comes to life. It's that ability to combine multiple data sets through that common location and really begin to generate some new insights that can have a real impact in your business.
Well, with all this data, you can really tell, like I've mentioned before, those hyper-local stories. And recently I attended a conference in Southern California on economic development, and we attended a panel where there were local industry thought leaders from a wide array of areas, from manufacturing, logistics to retail and commercial real estate and land development. And what everyone in the audience wanted to know, and what we all want to know, is what is the next great market disruptor? And a few of the panelists, they looked to technology. A few mentioned drones, self-driving cars. But one of the panelists in particular said, no, it's not a what, it's a who. And that's the millennials. So recent estimates have the millennials between 76 million and 86 million. This means that the millennials are now the largest living generation that we have in the United States. What's even more interesting is that only half of them have entered the workforce. So half of the millennials are in, and we've already seen these tectonic shifts in the marketplace. We look at, again, the Netflix, the Hulu, those streaming services with cord cutting. We've seen a transformation in different areas of retail. We've seen a fundamental shift in how people are behaving in the market. This is the new wave of consumers. And one of the things that dominates this wave is something called the MECO system. It's more than just the age of discovery now, the age of value. We're actually getting into a point where consumers are adopting all sorts of goods, and all of it fits within their own self-identified social identity. And what does this mean? Everything from the iPhone to the clothing to the types of experiences are different. And at 86 million, the millennials are now the most diverse generation that we have in the market. And I don't just mean ethnically. I mean from a perspective of behavior in the marketplace and social identity. So Robbie and I both are completely different. You can try to lump the millennials into one group, But 86 million, you can't afford to be wrong. It's not just the immediate impact, it's going to be what's going to happen in the next 5, 10, and the next 40 years of them consuming as professionals. So when you look on the hyperlocal level and you actually start to analyze these big data sets, what can you do? You can't have an individual case for every market, but you can have enjoyable, repeatable experiences that you can find those key indicators to make it a custom-tailored experience. Everything from your store facility layout to different loyalty programs to targeted marketing and promotions. So at Esri, we have users that use this software to start off automated marketing programs that if, say, weather changes to a certain degree, it will automatically send alerts to a specific consumer base in a geographic region to either, say, sell beverages that are hot and cold or different clothing sales. And this is how we're going to stay ahead. E-commerce alone is not affecting the retail market. This is a fundamental shift in how people are spending their money. What we need to do is do this market basket analysis to find out what's selling and where and why. Ultimately, what this does is help you find the insights of why these things are occurring. So one piece of software that we use for this is called geoanalytics. Geoanalytics allows us to analyze what we call spatial temporal data. This is data that occurs at a specific place at a specific time, so we can try to identify why. Why are these things occurring? And like I've mentioned, one of the greatest challenges that businesses face today is overcoming this big data. There is just so much out there, from demographics to financial transactions, movement. Real estate and retail are affected by all of these. So I've opened up what we call ArcGIS Pro. It's where we run the geoanalytics. And I'm going to demonstrate how companies can generate greater insight from their data by using a location strategy. So I've selected a layer that we've made available to use. We've cleared out the specifics so we can demonstrate it today. But this is financial transactions in one day. In fact, this is 1 billion financial transactions, and you'll notice that the map is quickly becoming populated by dots. So exploring patterns is the first step to understanding your data. But when you're looking at 1 billion dots, I mean, try to comprehend 1 billion. And as I zoom into the Northeast right now, you'll notice that the entire thing now is covered in dots. We can hardly find any specific patterns or any actionable information. So what we're going to do using this software is called data aggregation. It's where you take the data and you summarize it into a preset geographic area. This can be a grid or this can be a standard geography like a city. So the first thing I'm going to do is I turn on my bins. I'm going to now analyze and visualize all these dots in a standardized grid of squares. And you can immediately now see where there's the density in darker red. You can start to see now some of the patterns where the suburbs may be. And the bins is a great way to quickly represent where are these hotspots, but you don't get much influence in density. So one of the things that us cartographers like to do is we like to look at now hexagonal bins. We're going to look at smaller areas of a hexagon, and because it's a hexagon as opposed to a square, we can now start to see more of the distribution of the data. So not only do we see now the data in its density in urban areas, we see how that affects the suburban areas and the surrounding communities. Lastly, and what is probably going to be the most common you'll use at first when working with your stakeholders, you're going to now look at standard geographies. One of the main reasons to use standard geographies in the beginning is that we are all familiar with it. Standard geographies are country borders, state borders, cities, zip codes, all these things we're familiar with. We establish our trade areas based on these, and these are our map boundaries. What I like about using the standard geographies is you not only see the densities, but now you start to see the competition. You start to see how some suburban markets could relate in density to urban areas. And depending on how you visualize this, you can do a straight count of the data, what areas have what values. You can also do per capita. There is no end to the amount of data you can overlay here. When you do per capita, you can start to see then what markets are hot for certain items. And again, since these are all areas that we understand and know very well, they're easily relatable. And that's the power of this big data. We can start to overlay a lot of things, but again, visualization is only the first step to truly understanding the data. Whenever you're analyzing big data, you're going to have a very specific question in mind. Zoom around so now you can see all the different transitions. So one of the things I'm going to do is I'm going to go back out now to the United States. I'm going to look at it from a country perspective. I have this saved as a bookmark. It's going to open up. And I'm going to show you how we can actually use this big data to solve a very specific question, and that's analyzing fraud. So we have this 1 billion transactions, and we've identified either an actor or an event that has triggered some kind of suspicion. And I'm going to show you now how using geoanalytics we can look at those key indicators to see if this is a fraudulent activity. So one of the popular methods that criminals use in fraud is they will take a large sum of money and they'll divide it up into smaller amounts. This enables them to move it across the country through various transactions without setting off many alarms. So now we're in St. Louis and we're looking at one actor in particular. And I'm going to be analyzing a series of 5 events. Again, every one of these events takes place at a very specific place and time. I'm going to turn on this layer here and you'll see it's all within a 20-kilometer radius, within about a 4-hour period. So we see this actor's moving around and they're engaging in several transactions. And now as I start to look at the data and where it's coming or where it's going to, we're seeing that it's all going to the same recipient in Seattle, Washington, and that this particular actor has ensured that every one of the transactions is under $10,000. This could be because they want to cover their tracks again and not set off any big alerts by sending off $50,000 at once. But this isn't just limited to fraud. I want you to think now about your own organization, whether it's in retail, real estate, or manufacturing. And as I just demonstrate this bar, again, all of these events are spatial temporal, specific place at a specific time. I want you to think about what it is you do and how this data can work for you. Whether or not you're analyzing the movements of consumers, you want to understand. And we all have our personas that we work with, but you want to see now how personas act on certain days. If you have a persona that is more active in the retail marketplace, Monday through Friday versus Friday through Sunday, at what times of day? If you have a more domestic persona, is there a specific pattern they're following because they're engaging, taking children to school and then going into the workforce? It goes beyond that into actual movements. I was recently working with a user, and the one thing they do is shopping centers, strip malls, outdoor lifestyle centers, and they were developing a new center, and what they wanted to do was put basically a carbon copy of another place. And we're all familiar with anchor sites. But have we ever truly wondered why certain stores do well together, or even if there is a relationship between them? Just because 2 stores may do well together in one location doesn't mean they'll do well in the other. It doesn't mean that they actually even affect one another. So with this kind of software, you can analyze to find those statistical correlations, find out if your anchor sites are actually valuable. And the way you can do this is by analyzing the big data. So I've opened up our feature analysis and our big data tool set as part of geoanalytics. And what I'm going to do here is show you how we can analyze these tables. So I'm going to do what we call a spatial join. This is where we actually take one data set and join it to another. Now you can either join this with your own data or with a strategic partner or a data set that you purchase. Back to this example, I'm looking at fraud and financial transactions. I want to actually analyze each one of these transactions against the other. So I'm joining in my 2 layers, the financial transactions, and doing a one-to-one relationship. I want to look at each transaction as it relates to itself over a 20-kilometer radius. And I'm going to run this, but because this is a billion-point data set, and I'm going to be running it twice, this is a huge figure. So I've actually pre-run this to show you. And looking at my metadata here, this took 48 minutes to run. Again, 1 billion points against themselves twice. Identifying those key indicators, as you can see now across the map. Here's the value of visualizing big data. You can now see these connections. Since this is a case of looking for fraud, we can see what areas are interacting with each other to find possible criminal syndicates. But I now want you to think about on a hyper-local level how you can use this. You have your large big data financial transactions. How do different stores relate to one another? You can bring in, again, your strategic partners into this. You can bring in your own data set, purchase data set. You can integrate, and that's what's wonderful, as Robbie's mentioned, as this is a system of integration. You can bring in that mobile data now, test your personas, look at markets, look beyond just arbitrary generational names. So one of the things I can also do with this is automate these processes. So I've run this once, I built it from scratch, but I can automate it. So that as you start to ingest that data now, you can see the patterns as they flow. This is now a one-day pattern of 1 billion financial transactions going across the United States. And you can really see the activity starting off on the East Coast as the other time districts come into the working hours. This is the power of big data analysis, and this is the power of using a location strategy.
So as we've seen, a location strategy enables you to work with data at just ridiculous scales. The fact that Alex was able to work with 2 billion data points and yet hone in on those specific items that were merited investigation, that's really the true power of a location strategy. So the second main benefit that a location strategy delivers to businesses is that it really allows them to accelerate their agility. Businesses can no longer afford to wait days or even hours for mission-critical information and insights. They should be able to explore and analyze data as quickly as it comes in. And with a location strategy, you can absolutely do that. But in addition to just running in real time, a location strategy can actually also help you predict the future. You can build sophisticated models to estimate future demand for a given product or investment, or run a what-if model that says, hey, if we change the store layout in this way, what's going to happen? You can understand how an incoming storm is going to affect everything from your store sales and operations to the integrity of your supply chain. And even better than understanding how it will impact your stores, you can actually mitigate those impacts. And as Alex referenced, you can also even set up those automated processes that trigger an activity based on specific criteria. So one of the things I do want to address, though, is that there's this notion that this real-time capability is only available for select businesses that have like this really sort of advanced technical know-how, and that's just not the case. An essential component of real-time and location strategy means being able to access and edit live data anytime, anywhere. And with a location strategy built around ArcGIS, it's really, really easy and really intuitive to access your critical information from any device whenever you need it.
Thank you, Robbie, and that's absolutely correct. And one of the things you can do when you start to find the true value of this data, you can understand now your problems. You can understand them in a different sense. So one of the main takeaways I want you to have today is that every one of your problems and all your data is multidimensional. And what do I mean by this? We may think we know what a particular problem is, but that problem is complex. It may be actually the series of dozens of smaller issues that are working its way up to the surface. And same with your data. We'd all like to think that data is objective, but we all know it's up to interpretation. Two people can look at the same figure and come to different results. All of this together compounds issues, and that's what leads to a lot of business challenges. So I was recently looking at an area here in Southern California, and it was a beautiful strip mall, had great street visibility, great accessibility, wonderful parking. All of this aside, and also it was next to a large residential area, between the residential area and the freeway. All of this aside, there was a high turnover rate of the different store locations. Only 1 of 5 were actually able to stay open longer than a year. And the one that did survive was actually very successful. Several retailers had been in this space, other services, and we really just couldn't make sense of what was going on. So we started to look at the data, and we started to kind of question how we were thinking about that data. And one of the things that came in was traffic patterns. Looking at it, had great visibility from the street and a lot of traffic going by. But we started to actually analyze now, well, who lives in this area? We're assuming that these are the people that want to go to this location, that live in this area. What is their behavior and what do they do? They're passing by this site. We're sure of that. But why aren't they going in? And what we started to realize was that this was a neighborhood of very densely populated commuters, commuted about 30 minutes or more to go to work. So they were passing this storefront, and they weren't around all day. There was actually a very low residential rate there during the day. So their target audience was at work. The reason the one place was successful was it was a restaurant. So the peak traffic flow at night, people were coming in after work, and they were sitting in, going in and going to dinner because they were either too tired to cook or they wanted to have a night out. This enabled us to make those recommendations on what to put there. More convenient shopping, things that people purchase after work, not retail, because there was actually very low traffic during the peak retail hours. So this is how, when you see your data like never before and you realize that these problems are multidimensional and how the location, that spatial temporal aspect matters, you can set yourself up to become increasingly competitive. You can start forecasting your stores and your territories. You know what markets to expand in and what markets to completely avoid. You can start to see how your stores are influencing other stores and start to look at that cannibalization. Also with supply chain management, which I still think one of the greatest modern marvels is just-on-time delivery with logistics. And then we know there's 2 ways to increase and grow. One is to increase your revenues, and the other one is to decrease your overhead. And if you only have enough in your store to sell and meet that demand, you are doing it wonderfully. You know what areas you can release a new product and service and what areas it won't work. And again, it comes back to that market basket analysis. We have demographics, but challenge those and look at the actual consumer behavior. And this is how you're going to know your neighborhood. So the spatial temporal aside, one of the other tools that we use for this big data analysis and looking at all the components is called insights. and Robbie's going to be showing you how insights can be used in a resale setting.
Okay, so what I want to do here is walk through a quick demo where we're going to put ourselves into the mindsets of a big box retailer in the Bay Area. And we've got some anonymized customer data that you can see. We've also got some information about our stores. And we know that most of our stores are kind of in the heart of the Bay Area. And so we're really curious about how we can better serve some of our more distant customers. So what I've loaded in here, just to start, are 3 different views of the same customer data set we have for the Bay Area. And so in the upper left area, you can kind of just see a simple map of where these customers are located. And as I hover over them, I can get some basic information about each of them. In the upper right, I'm again looking at customer locations, but now we're symbolizing them based on how much money they spend. And as we're doing some kind of analysis, you can imagine this is something that we really would want to know. But we recognize that geographic visualization is not the only way to explore data. And that's one of the really powerful things about Insights, is that it lets you explore your data in the way that best serves your given needs and workflows. So down here we have this chart called channel preference, and what this attribute describes is what channel does a customer usually respond to when we send out some kind of promotions? How do they usually shop with us? And what's awesome about Insights is that as you start to interact with the charts and as you click an item in the charts, you can see the map reflect those changes. So what I'm doing here is when I click on coupon, the map is actually showing me all of those customers that have responded to our most recent coupon promotion. And with Insights, it's really easy to create these kind of visualizations that are always dynamically linked back between the maps and the charts. So for example, if I want to take a look at how my customers usually pay when they come to our stores, I can simply drag that over and create a chart. And in this case, I'll go ahead and create a donut chart. And again, we see that same functionality. When I click on a segment in the chart, the maps update and show that same relationship. So I can see everyone who paid by Visa on the maps instantly. So in just a few minutes, we walk through just a single data set and how we can slice and dice it and view it in multiple different ways. But where Insight's true power comes is from analyzing multiple data sets at once. So I mentioned we had some store data, and I happen to have this in an Excel spreadsheet. So with Insights, I can simply navigate to my desktop, grab the store data set I want, and go ahead and upload it directly. Now, when I do this, you'll notice that I didn't suddenly get a new map. And the reason for that is that anytime you upload a new data set to Insights through Excel, we make you enable location first. And the reason why we do this is we want to make sure that we're correctly interpreting the data and setting it up for the best visualization and analysis. Now, in this case, Insights got it right, and it usually does. So I'll go ahead and run that, and then I'll take the coordinates and drag them over to create a map. So let me just rearrange some of my cards so we can now see our map of our customer locations against our map of our stores. And when we look at this, we can see that the scenario we described, where a lot of our stores are based in the kind of heart of the Bay Area, is absolutely true. So in order to begin our analysis, we need to get a proxy of our existing store trade areas. And we can do that by using drive times. One of the best things about Insights is you have direct access to a whole suite of spatial analytics directly within this web-based tool. So in this case, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to create a 20-minute drive time around each of my stores. And what this will give me is a rough estimation of kind of my core store trade areas. So if I hop over to the next tab, I've already run this analysis, and I can see just visually, yes, it absolutely looks like we are doing a great job of covering our kind of core urban customers, but some of our more distributed customers aren't getting the kind of attention that maybe they need. So what I can do is I can take this buffer layer and drag it over so I can take a closer look at the relationship. And in fact, what I can do is I can also use this new buffer layer as a way to filter my entire customer data set. So if I look right now, I've got about 14,000 customer points, but I'm only interested in those customers that live outside of the trade areas we've identified. So this time what I'll do is I'm going to run a spatial filter, and I'm going to use that drive time I just created. And what I'm going to tell Insights is I actually want to know where are all the customers that don't live in this orange polygon. And so when I run this analysis, I'm left with a map that looks very similar to the one we were just looking at. But again, if I go ahead and I look at the information, I can see that we're actually only looking at a subset of our data at this point. So we are just looking at those customers that live outside of our store trade areas. Now, this granular view of the data could be very useful for several different workflows. But in this case, I'd actually like to take a look at this data at kind of like a broader level. So what we're going to do is, similar to the way Alex aggregated up the financial transaction information, we're going to aggregate up these customer points to something like zip codes so we can start making some better decisions about which markets we want to investigate. And to do that, we can simply go to our Geographies tab in Insights. And this is one of the things I have to say I really love about Insights. It has all of my standard levels of geography preloaded, so I don't have to spend time hunting for a reference layer. I can just take the zip code, drag it over, and start doing my spatial aggregation right away. So when I do this, what Insights is going to do is it's going to count up the number of customers in each zip code and basically give me a color-coded map of where my customers are clustered, which is absolutely an important factor in this analysis. After all, if we're thinking about maybe opening a new store or running some kind of a targeted marketing campaign, we need to know where our customers are. But just because we have a lot of customers in an area doesn't mean they spend a lot of money. So I also want to see the density of my spend. And so to do that, I'll simply add the ability to summarize the dollars field. And if you remember in the very beginning, that first tab, we looked at that dollars field. So what I'm going to essentially be left with are two maps, a map of my customers where they're clustered and a map of where my spending is clustered. So when I click over to this final tab, I can see this in two very clear results. So the map on my left is where my customers are densely located. And this tracks with what we sort of saw visually early on, that it seems like we've got a lot of customers in the Vacaville, Sacramento, and Salinas areas. Now when I look at the spend density, I can see not only do we have a lot of customers in those areas, but it also appears that they spend higher average, a pretty substantial amount of money for us, certainly higher than our average. So with these results, it seems very clear to us that we should be investigating Sacramento, Santa Rosa, and Salinas for some kind of further exploration. Maybe we want to think about running a targeted campaign there to get them to buy online and shop with us in a way that's more convenient. Maybe we do want to think about opening some kind of a new facility there. But we also recognize that not every stakeholder wants to see their data this way. And so with Insights, it's really easy to create a table of my results. So in this case, what I want is I want the sum of my dollars and my zip code, and I'll simply drag them over to create a table. And what's great about this is I can sort the table, and so what I have right away is a priority list of the markets we should target. And just like those charts, if I click an item in the table, I can see it highlighted in the maps. So right away, I now have a priority list of the 5 markets that we should further target and further investigate. So I know we covered a lot in just a few minutes of Insights, but I hope you can start to get a sense of how just asking a few questions and just being inquisitive with your data can lead to some really powerful insights that can help us drive greater success.
You can see how intuitive this software is. You already know the data that you have, the questions you want to try to solve. But one of the things, I was working with a real estate professional back in October, and he said that he always knew what he wanted to say, but he never had the way to say it. And that's where this kind of software helped him. And this professional was later on in his career, and he was able to take to the software and really, within about a day or so of training, start to go in and create these powerful tools and presentation kits for his stakeholders. Which brings us to our final point of the location strategy.
Thanks, Alex. So the third main benefit we talk about with the location strategy is this idea of unleashing your staff. And really, when you think about it, your people are your business. And so with the location strategy, you can give them the tools and information they need to help them thrive and really unlock their domain knowledge. And with the location strategy, it's about removing barriers to collaboration and efficiency by getting rid of the process bottlenecks in your organization. You're basically empowering your people to go find the information they need and to use the tools they need whenever they need them. It's really shifting to more of a self-service type of model where you're no longer waiting on a specified gatekeeper within an organization for a certain data set, or you're having to go out to a back office unit and request a specialized report that's out of date by the time it actually gets to you. With a location strategy, you just get that sort of on-demand access to information and to tools that you really need to make your people more productive so that they can spend more time doing their job and adding value and less time jumping through administrative and bureaucratic hurdles within your organization. Now, this isn't to say you shouldn't just give everyone access to all the data. You're absolutely still going to permission data based on role. But when you give everyone access to the same information, that's all the same currency and everything like that, you're keeping everyone on the same page, and you're ensuring that decisions are going to be made faster and better and more consistently than they ever have been in the past.
Of course, and see, this is where the whole platform story comes in. It's not just geoanalytics and insight. These are all attached to what we call ArcGIS Online. And what we have at the very end of this workflow are powerful custom applications you can use, not only for internal communications, but also working with your stakeholders. So within the follow-up email that will come with the recording of this webinar, we'll have 2 links of previous webinars where we've discussed Business Analyst Online, which is another piece of software we use for in-depth market analysis, but also story maps. These are presentation tools that allow you to, again, keep your team informed, make sure everyone's on the same page. You can have the greatest insight, you can be right and have the proper data and the right understanding, but if you can't properly share that in a way that's easily digestible by your audience, what's the point? So what these are perfect for are things like site prospecting and market profiles, being able to sell a site or convince that a site is worth investing in the future. And again, this is the entire platform that we mentioned earlier, where you have independent systems, but this will combine all of them, and you can have one area you work in for not only the collection, but the analysis and then the presentations. Which brings us to the 3 things we want you to remember walking away from this presentation today.
So thanks, Alex. As Alex mentioned at the very beginning, your intuition is important. But in this kind of data-driven world and really with the accelerated pace of business and just the massive shifts we're seeing, you need to have more confidence in your decision. So intuition alone isn't going to cut it. But with a location strategy, you can fuse the hard science of spatial analytics with your individual expertise and knowledge to make the best possible decisions in every situation. Now, the second point of everything in business happens somewhere. Again, I know it seems really simplistic, but it really is a powerful concept when you stop and think about it. Again, when you're done with this webinar, just take a few minutes, or as you're going through the rest of your day, think about all the different data sets you're working with, and think about whether or not location plays a role in those data sets. Chances are it does. And so just think of what you'd be able to do as an organization if you can really bring that location component of all your enterprise data to life. And finally, insights are only valuable if they drive action. Insights are a means to an end. They are not the end in and of itself. So as an organization, what you really need to do is to prioritize the analytics and insights that are actionable and affect the bottom line. I actually recently went to a data science conference where the attendees talked about this very problem, where sometimes the allure of solving some problem through advanced analytics ends up sending people down these rabbit holes where they generate results that just aren't actionable or aren't actually realistic. So that's the other great thing about a location strategy is it lets you hone in on the insights and the indicators that are actually going to drive a major difference in your business.
We see some questions starting to come in. One of the people we have with us today is, I'm very excited about this, one of our commercial specialists here for real estate is Helen Thompson. She'll be assisting us with answering some of these questions. Helen is a mentor of mine with over 20 years experience in spatial sciences and is a specialist in real estate and has worked quite frequently with even the CCIM Institute. So where can some of this data be located? I'm assuming this is for either geoanalytics or for insights. Within insights, the great thing about the data is you can integrate from virtually any source. So insights is compatible with SAP HANA, Oracle, your SQL Server databases. So many of your enterprise systems are compatible. Also Excel spreadsheets. We know that a lot of you still work, again, with Excels and CSVs. With both geoanalytics and insights, you can drag and drop your data directly in. So I've worked with several users where they have their portfolios and their listings, and they're very bulky Excel files. We just save those as a CSV, and then we can drag and drop. So long as there's an address or a latitude and longitude on there, our software is able to identify those locations, and it stores the record then within your system. Also, I mentioned earlier ArcGIS Online. This is our cloud-based system where you can store all your information. So once you drag and drop that CSV, you can create those layers. So you notice Robbie and I were just opening layers on the side of our dashboard. We save those up. And what's nice about that is it's safe in the cloud. You can either share that out to the public if you want to make a presentation for a stakeholder or want to use it for marketing, or you can keep that internal or private to yourself or your company. I mean, there's no limit with the data permissions on what you can do. Oh, for expenditures, yes. Another one of the applications that we can do is profits and loss and expenditures. So you can create those dashboards or those applications so you can look at and track the revenue as it comes in. Within these applications online, you can have them hosted and you can actually bring in live data streams. So we have made several applications in the past where, similar to Robbie's demonstration where we had the dots, we can set those up to be proportional based on real-time feeds of data. You can set those intervals to every minute, every 5 minutes. And one of the things I'd encourage you to look at is called the Living Atlas series from Esri. This is where we have a lot of our large big data sets for Earth observation and other things like that, including traffic, up to the minute traffic data.
Yeah, there's also a lot of demographic information available in the Living Atlas too that I think a lot of our business customers could really benefit from.
That is right.
So I saw a question come in about the ability to integrate Insights with Power BI. I'm not entirely sure what the relationship between Insights and Power BI is. I do know that we do have a formal relationship with Microsoft and Power BI. There's actually a module now directly within Power BI, if I'm not mistaken, that lets you use some of Esri's mapping technology directly within your Power BI dashboards. But I'm not exactly sure how that's going to, what the relationship between Power BI and Insights is going to be just yet.
And Robbie, I can add to that. Obviously, one of the key things is to work out where these data sources and data services are coming from. So the nice thing about the architecture is that Power BI and Insights can use the same CSVs and Esri-based data services. So one of the things that we think about in terms of integration is using Insights to actually create the data sets, create the knowledge and the experience that Robbie showed in the form of a data service. Yeah, so where are my social media people, what's the greatest concentration of people at different times of the day, and then publish that as a ArcGIS service that Power BI could consume. So don't just think of Insights as a data visualization analysis tool, also think it as a way to publish expertise.
I still think too with Insights, one of the great things is all the workflows that Robbie showed are repeatable. So you don't have to build this from scratch each time, similar to geoanalytics. Once you have that workflow established and those indicators that you'd like, you can actually save that as a template to reuse for other things or share across the organization. So depending on the job role, some people may have similar job processes with a slightly different need. That's where Insights and geoanalytics, you can start to focus just the specifics and again have those repeatable processes that really streamline those streamline that whole function. And I see a question here about a use case for logistics and route optimization and analysis. Yes, for ArcGIS Pro Business Analyst, our software enables you to take your points and actually bring in traffic patterns and data so you can optimize routes. I mentioned just-in-time delivery. That is something that our software can certainly help do, is optimize that process.
Yeah, we're also starting to see a lot of our customers adopt routing for things like home delivery and even other functions like, delivering to lockers or pickup facilities. So in terms of logistics, there's a lot of different use cases: supply chain integrity, kind of territory optimization. Anything that involves moving something from point A to point B is absolutely something that can be improved with our technology.
Yeah, and picking up on that are things like, there's a lot of people modeling the whole of the supply chain. So figuring out, do I need 12 distribution centers on the East Coast or 7? What happens when I change the number to 9? Does it make an impact on the amount of vehicles that I use, the distance that's driven, the number of drivers, the work time, all those different things? So one of the great things about a location strategy is to look at the different components of the problem you're trying to solve. So you might be solving for maximum efficiency and coverage. That in this case might lead to lots of distribution centers. Or you might want to solve for minimum cost, where you've probably got less distribution centers and more vehicles working shorter times. So these are all the sort of problems that people are tackling with these types of systems. One of the questions is, how do you locate social media origins? There's there's a number of different ways that this has been done. Some of the tools have APIs that with a geo position you can get access to, but also one of the great things you can do is use the information about the person that's sharing. Normally that contains a home address, a town, or a zip code, and one of the things that people are doing is linking that to the demographics and the psychographics of where those people are from. So then you're able, just like you can do with GPS data, to sort of say how many people are coming from here and what do they look like. Also, the phones themselves have things like language and operating system versions, and many of our browsers also publish that information. So being able to select between languages and things like that. I was talking to a customer this morning about New York, and they're filtering 7 different languages as people go around New York to actually model visitors in addition to residents, and in addition to using Esri's and our partners' data to model daytime population. So this is this external visitor who's coming from different places to try and optimize the experience for those visitors. There's a question about ArcGIS server and connecting to big data. So the big data capabilities of geoanalytics come with ArcGIS for enterprise, but many of the other data sets which are in big data can be, again, published as services, so any of the tools and solutions that are part of this can go and access those. And then just finally, there's a question about use cases, and what we'll do is we'll work to make sure that everybody's got copy and access to those different use cases and things.
Excellent. That seems to be all the questions we have. If any more questions do arise after this presentation, feel free to, again, respond to that email you got when you registered. That will get you in touch with our team directly, and we'd be happy to answer those questions. Again, we've recorded this webinar, and we should be sending out that link to you to watch within the next 10 business days or so. So thank you very much for joining us today. We appreciate having you with us, and we look forward to seeing what your organization can do with a location strategy. Have a great day.